shout out to our sponsors. We have several sponsors who support the organization. We have CLA, who is a partner. We have our friends at Outpace that you'll be hearing from as a supporter level. Red Rock Marketing, VR Mergers and Acquisitions, Pat Munger Construction, and University of Haven College of Business Executive MBA program. So just let's give a round of applause to all of our supporters. We also have an awesome podcast series, and our latest podcast will be coming out, well, it's actually out, but it will be officially announced next Tuesday, and two of our panelists, our moderator and our panelists, are on that podcast. So it is a podcast series called Meet the Manufacturers. You'll see an email next Tuesday on the most recent one, which features Rick and Tom. That's brought to us by Tone Resnick. And then for future planning, we have our big holiday event coming up on December 7th. We're at Stony Creek. That is 5 to 8 on Wednesday, December 7th. And a great event. We usually have 75 to 100 people or so show up to that event. So we hope that we see everybody in just a couple weeks for our annual holiday event. And that is a Toys for Tots fundraiser as well. So please bring an unwrapped gift, and we will be donating that to Toys for Tots. So without further ado, I will introduce to you Rick from Outpace. I'm very, very excited about this panel. We're going to be talking about EOS and some book called Traction. I am a personal huge advocate of this program myself. 2 years into my EOS journey. I know there's folks here that are in different stages of their journey and some who haven't started their journey yet. So at this point, I will turn it over to Rick and the panel, and we're going to learn a little bit more about EOS and the folks here on the panel and their journey.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, let's see. Can you guys hear me okay, or should I use the mic?
You're good.
Everybody's all right?
Good.
It'll be hard in a sec. So we'll see. That's my wife, who's the chief operating officer of our company. So you can see the teamwork's working well here.
I like mine.
You like them? Wow, Jill. Okay, yeah. Okay, so as we kind of get things rolling here, just to give really all of us a sense, could you just put your hand up if either you have started to use EOS, you've read Traction, or you've been around EOS a little bit? All right, so I'd say about half the room. All right, that's really, really helpful. And thank you, panelists, for raising your hand on that. That was really good.
Just adding support.
Yeah, I like that. That was silent support. All right, so let's talk about what we're talking about. We'll probably take 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll start to get to people's real world experiences and allow for, to really kind of hear not necessarily the representative of EOS talking about it, but what people's experiences are with it. So to give everybody a little bit of background, I was thinking about the right way to kind of go do this. And I thought that sharing what my experience was with the second company that I used with EOS might be a good place to start. So before I became a business coach, helping introduce EOS to different businesses, I spent 28 years in high tech. So I was mostly startups. Tech was my jam, so to speak. And the second one I went to, I was the head of revenue for a company. It was doing about $17 million or so. And the company was doing okay. We had a legacy product that generated about $12 million. We had a new product line that we were very excited about, but it was really slowing down in the way, it was slowing the whole business down because we're focusing so much effort on the new thing that the old thing was really just kind of struggling a bit. So after being there for a little while, the company decided that the board there decided to split the company into two pieces. We were going to basically have the legacy part of the business. That was the part that I took. We called it retail. So if anybody's been on a retail website and the site's kind of tracking what you're doing, you probably don't know it's doing that. If that's the case, our technology is doing its job. And then it's suggesting to you what products that you may be interested in. You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. All right. So that's what our part of the technology was. We had this new business unit that was going to use a lot of the same information to basically do advertising. When we broke the business up into two pieces, I took over this retail business unit, and right away I said, hey, listen, I've had a lot of success with this entrepreneurial operating system. I want to put this into the business as we're running our side of the shop. The advertising side of the business, the other side, they said, hey, the head of that group said, we're good. I've been running businesses for 30, 40 years. I know what I'm doing. I'm good. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because it's like a good case study, almost like an A-B split, right? We took the same culture, same people, broke it up into two different groups. Our job was to basically be kind of like the steady business. Now, this is software. It's a little bit different world. Our kind of slow growth path was 30% growth year over year. The high-speed ads business, they were supposed to grow 2 to 3 times each year. That's what we were trying to build in this software world. I know, different world than manufacturing. We don't have to worry about people. We just need people to buy the software. So we get the tools into place. And when we talk about EOS, it stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And these are a bunch of business tools. Business tools like org charts and scorecards and goals and things that pretty much everybody's heard of, but maybe has not been overly effective in getting instituted into the business. So we did that right away. Started to put this thing in top to bottom. It turns out our business takes off. We go from 12.5 million, and our business had been kind of flat to a little bit negative. We grew from 12.5 million to 24 million in that first year. Things started to really catch. Not only did that happen, but the morale in the business really started to get strong, and we were attracting talent all over the place. And this business was in San Francisco, so we were competing against some good heavyweights like Salesforce and Oracle and Google and Facebook at that time, Meta now. And the reason why I tell the story is because the contrast with the advertising business was pretty stark. They couldn't get it together. They couldn't get the alignment. They couldn't get people agreeing on the vision. So whereas our side basically was kind of cruising, the ad business unit, it was just a mess. It was a whole bunch of people just trying to work together. People were taking in different things, different processes, different ways of working, and it wasn't working that well. So after the first year, the head of the advertising business unit, they said we had a leadership problem. They replaced that person. Now the second year, we continued to cruise. We basically went from $24 million up to $38 million over that next year. And the thing that I liked about it was the tools were really working. So our rate of acceleration and the morale and the calmness in the business was getting better, not worse, as we were getting bigger. The ads group was still a bit of a mess. Now at this point I was like, oh my gosh, this is that EOS. You need to use EOS side. You need to use EOS. So I kept saying to the ads group. As the business was starting to scale, we were looking at trying to take the company public, and we brought in a new president to help us go do that. And he came in, he looked at both sides of the business. He said, oh, I know what happened. He goes, when we split the business, you won the draft. You got all the good people, and they got all the bad people. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take your head of engineering and your head of marketing and your head of product, and we're going to give them to the other side, and you just go figure out how you're going to go scale this up. I was like, no, we're not strong enough. We're not strong enough. We're not ready to do that. We're not ready to do that. Well, the thing that was really remarkable was it only took 3 to 4 months when these superstars that were on this side, we had really strong people and we had a great structure. That combination allowed really good people to truly be superstars. And when we basically took that structure away from them, we took these people that were deemed superstars and put them on the other side, all of a sudden they started to struggle just like all the other managerial people on the other side. It only took about 3 to 4 months before they were like, can I please come back to this group? Can I please come back? Can I please come back? Because they wanted the structure, the vision, the perspective. And that's kind of where it's at. And when I look back at why that occurred, what was the difference? What was EOS doing? When I had learned EOS several years before, one of the co-founders of EOS was our EOS implementer, our business coach. And in the very first meeting, he said something very, very powerful. In the meeting, he said, he looked at me, we had 4 leaders at that time. He looked at me and he said, hey, where did you learn how to run a business? And when he asked that question, it was kind of pointed. I was the first one he asked. I was like, oh, whoa, challenging me about how I know to run a business. So I was like, oh, maybe Microsoft, Nortel, maybe you heard of them. He's like, yeah, okay, there, big shot, got it. Then he asked the next guy, where did you learn how to run a business? And that person said, hey, I spent over 20 years at Time Warner. Next person said, I spent over 20 years at Deloitte. He goes, all right, great companies. For sure, they have definite ways of operating. But the problem is that the way you operate at Microsoft, some of those things that you work with are going to work very much in line with the way they did things at Time Warner and Deloitte. But there's other practices that are going to be in direct conflict with the way that the other people did it. And we need to have a single operating system for this business. We can't just have every single person who has learned their own way of doing things all just coming in and say, I know how to do it, I know how to do it. We need to have one operating system, top to bottom, for this business. That business, it worked in a big way. The second business was my experience that I was talking about. Third business, we had the same type of situation. In 2 years, business went from 2 to 15 million in 2 years, and that one got sold. And so that's why we created this coaching business, because EOS, from my standpoint, is the structure of how to run a business that too few of us actually get trained on how to do. Most of the time, as far as when I talk to different business leaders and I ask that same question, where did you learn how to run a business? It's kind of like, well, I was at this company and I just do the same things that they did. And so that's where we basically want to start to get into a place where we're going to basically bring in a single operating system. All right. So what is EOS? What is an operating system when we talk about this? So let me just do that, and then we'll get into our panel discussion here. The very founding concept of the entrepreneurial operating system. A lot of times when people think of an operating system, they'll think like, hey, what kind of phone do you have? Like an Android or a old Windows phone, or an Apple device, or a PC. Do you have a PC or do you got an Apple device? And what those operating systems are doing is they basically provide the rules that allow for dozens or hundreds of applications to work concurrently on the same set of resources. So when we talk about a business operating system, that's what we're talking about doing. We need to basically have that operating system for how the business runs. Okay, perfect. So the founding principle, before EOS became a thing, the founder of it, this guy Gino Wickman, he wrote the book Traction. That book's got over 1.2 million copies sold. It's a really, really popular book, about 10 years old. He basically started to study what were the what were the problems that businesses were trying to face or trying to overcome. And when he started cataloging, because he was working with all these dozens of different businesses, car washes, tech business, manufacturing business, everything you could think of, what he discovered was that there were about 130 to 150 operational issues. Sometimes it feels like there's an infinite number of operational issues. It wasn't. When he basically went into it now with 10 plus years of research on it, there's about 150 operational issues that any business struggles with. The next step that he took with this is the brilliant part. 150 is a finite number, but when you're struggling with a whole lot of those at the same time, it's exhausting. I think everybody's been there. So the premise to it was, what was the root cause of those 150 issues? And that's where it just came down to 6 areas of a business. 6 areas. If we can just strengthen 6 areas of the business, then all of those operational issues will start to fall by the wayside, because the business is now set up to naturally handle them. So all EOS is, when we take all of it all kind of together, it's nothing more than 20 business tools. We're not talking software. Business tools are like, what's your org chart look like? What's your goals? What are your KPIs? Do we have those things running top to bottom? What's your meeting structure? It's real, real basic stuff that everybody's heard of, but too few people really implement. And so when they basically started, they said, if we can just get these 20 tools into a business, those 20 tools will strengthen those 6 areas of the business, which will allow for all the operational issues to be naturally handled. The stress, the alignment, the pressures that we feel in the business, they all start to fall off. So that's the premise of what EOS is all about. If that makes sense to everybody, we'll start to go and start talking about real world situations. Everybody good with that? Okay, you guys are like about time. You got it? Oh, we lost it? All right. So I'll throw this out there for any one of you. So does everybody, we did introduce already. All right, so good. So for any of our panelists, my first question for you is, has EOS had a real impact? And if so, how? Like, instead of just kind of like, yes, like, where's it had an impact?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, should we introduce ourselves?
Oh, we didn't do introductions earlier? I'm sorry about that, yeah.
That's okay.
I was going to let your wife. Sorry.
You might want to stand back there again, yeah.
Tom McGuire, Industrial Heater Corp. The soon-to-be owner, coming in January. Fourth generation family business, 101 years old. We make heater bands that go in injection molding machines and contract sheet metal fabricated parts, among other things. So we're about 8 months into our EOS journey. So I think I'm the rookie on the panel. I learned how to do business from my dad, by the way,
Is that right?
to piggyback on your discussion earlier.
Perfect. Chris, want to
So we
introduce
all
yourself?
learn.
Hi, Kristen Moreira. I am the CFO of Bead Industries and actually McGuire Manufacturing, our sister company. We have been doing EOS for 2.5 years, so I think I'm the veteran
Yep.
on this panel. I'm also the treasurer of Manufacture CT, and I'm excited to tell you about it.
Perfect.
Good evening, I'm Bob Williams, the president of McGuire Manufacturing. We embarked on our journey in June or February of 2021, a little bit after he did, so we had the advantage of having some experience behind us with Kristen being on our leadership team, so we transitioned in very easily and just looking forward to answering some questions and telling you about our journey.
Perfect. All right, Tom, you ready? So, has EOS had real impact? And if so, how has it had real impact?
Yeah, I mentioned that I'm the soon-to-be owner because I think just to put some perspective into it, the transition from my dad into myself has played a big part in why EOS has been great for us. Just being able to show that we have some structure in our organization has allowed my dad, for other people who've gone through family transitions, to feel a lot more comfortable about this whole thing. He's been out of the business for about 5 years, but I had this vision that it was going to be this romantic handover one day. Here's the business on or something like that, but it feels like I'm pulling it from him more than anything else. But the thing that EOS, I think, more than anything else, has helped our team do is become aligned. Our team, there's 4 people on our leadership team. We spent hours and hours and hours, I think I did the math before I came here, between 75 and 100 hours sitting in a conference room talking about what our vision is, where do we want to be in 10 years, 3 years, 1 year, what are our core values, what is our organizational chart going to look like, accountability chart, our metrics, all that good stuff. And these are hard questions to answer. And to do it with your team and to sit in these conference rooms and have those hard conversations, bounce ideas back and forth, argue in a good way, that has created an environment of alignment and focus that has just been night and day for us, and is helping us move in the right direction. So that's my big takeaway.
Perfect. We can go down the line. All right, we're on our own now, so talk loud. Exactly, Kristen. I'll throw it over on the table here.
I think of a lot of things, but one of the big things that I think of, and
Oh, there you go.
said the word several times, is structure. So I think before EOS, I feel like at Bead, we were scattered. Everything was important, and when everything's important, nothing is important.
I like it's working.
Do I look better holding it, even if it's
That's good. It's giving confidence, yeah.
It looks good. There's a button.
No, but I think the battery's down on it, Kim.
Okay. Where was it at? Yeah, so everything was important, so nothing really was important. We had tons of meetings, and they were ineffective. And that's the part that...
Just died, yeah.
They seemed to be really ineffective meetings. There was too many people there. We didn't have an agenda. People would go on in the meetings and just about why things weren't getting done, making excuses, blaming other people. And then we'd walk out of there later than the meeting was supposed to end, and everybody was just kind of frustrated. And so I think what EOS really did was give us the tools to create the structure to figure out what the most important things we wanted to get done were, and to not only focus on those as a management team, but to communicate that down through the organization so everybody in the organization is rowing in the same direction to get to those goals, and everybody has a little piece of helping get to those company goals. So to me, that's one of the biggest.
Excellent.
Biggest
Appreciate that. Bob, any thoughts?
Going last is always the best, because I get time.
You get time to think? Yeah.
But structure, accountability, we're a lean, small company. Our leadership team consists of 4 people. We lean on each each other literally every day. Same thing Kristen said, we'd have meetings, a fire would come up. One of the things that EOS has helped me most is delegation, realizing there's other people that can help with the team, and helping other people, or kind of delegating some of those accountability issues to other people, whether it be on a leadership team or throughout the company. If it's done one thing for us, it's created structure. We had meetings for the sake of having meetings. We have a talented team, but the execution a lot of times just wasn't there because of the lack of structure and what are our next steps. And what I really like about EOS is, it breaks it down so the measurability, our rocks or goals as we call them are done over a 13-week basis. It's a heck of a lot easier to achieve something and measure it and look at it if it's right in front of you. But your short-term goals obviously are to build on your long-term 10-year plan, but those little steps and checking the boxes after 13 weeks, get together and set those rocks again is very satisfying and helps you keep on point to achieving your ultimate 10-year vision plan.
Yeah, this is a big thing that we have. So a lot of times when we have the founders or the owners are taking a position, I think most people try to be kind, they want to be good leaders, and they say to their direct reports, if you have any questions, come to me, I want to help. I'll help you get those answers. Come to me, come to me, come to me. And then those leaders start to get accustomed. They've got more of those answers. They've got greater perspective. They usually have a lot more knowledge because they basically grew up in the business. And then after years, the leadership team has been trained to come to them to get the answers. And that's when you start to see that the leaders start to go, oh my gosh, I'm the only one making decisions around here, not realizing that we've kind of trained our leadership teams to do exactly that. So one of the early exercises that we get into is a thing that we call the accountability chart. It's like it's an org chart, but we just take a couple things out of it. We basically say we don't want a huge description, it's 5 bullets. And we basically say we don't want to see titles. We don't want to hear, oh, I'm a director, oh, I'm a junior vice president. Really, peons, I'm a senior vice president. So we just take all of that title stuff out of the mix, say what's the seat, what's the name of the seat, what are the 5 bullets, and then we basically push our leadership team to start to own their domains. That step where we're basically starting to get good at not providing the answer and expecting our leadership team members or departmental team members to start to bring the answers themselves, that's how we start to build up those teams to become stronger, and that's where we kind of wean them off the dependency that we may have actually built inadvertently. Does that make sense to everybody? A lot of people felt that? All right, let's keep going. So, was there a point where you, they're not prepped with these questions, so if there's that delay, that pause, that fear, here we go. Was there a point where you started to feel like EOS was working? And like, what gave you that indication? Was there any spot when you're kind of like, and it doesn't matter if you're a month into it or if you were 12 months into it, was there anything you were like, wow, yeah, Bob?
I'll take that. Right person, right seat, wrong person, wrong seat. All the things we hire to fire based on our core values are all part of the EOS system. We had some tough decisions to make one of our first meetings on identifying who are the right players in the right seats and who they aren't. And we identified 3 people of a relatively small team that perhaps weren't in the right seat. Not saying they weren't carrying the weight or they weren't the right people, but we identified them as potential issues. And one thing EOS did right away on the accountability system, it showed it in that those individuals who were in the wrong seats, a lot of managerial decisions kind of took care of themselves organically. They realized they perhaps weren't in the right seat. We made a change automatically. I'd say within about a 3-week period. This was a remote employee. Even prior to EOS, we weren't sure if this individual was the right one, but it kind of got us off. We need to make a change because this is not the direction our vision is going, which is always tough. We're not in business, obviously, to get rid of people. The human side of the business is very difficult. But there was other 2 people who were day-to-dayers that I've been at McGuire a long time, for 10 years, we're doing the same things over and over again. We expect them to do different results. EOS just shut that down automatically. They weren't the right people. One left on their own, and one was obviously asked to leave after that. So with that creates better culture, right? I mean, we had other people that were coming on board, and we were able to bring on subsequently some people on our factory side who frankly don't participate in the EOS system quite as much as our administrative or office staff. But we have one person that's come on board and just bought in and knows our core values, and it really represents McGuire as we want to, based on the EOS system and helping us establish those core values. And they ultimately hired on those, and obviously we've made some tough decisions based on our core values as well. So I would say in the time frame was the day we met with you, we identified those 3 people. That wasn't what we wanted to do, but realization of running a business, you have to do it. Those are hard issues.
Perfect.
Okay.
Kristen, you're up.
All right. I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Bob said, because that was a major thing at Bead as well. I mean, prior to EOS, we had some really lower performing employees, and then higher performing employees who were picking up the slack for the lower performing employees. And what we saw was it was creating like just a bad taste in people's mouths, resentment. If they don't have to do it, why do I have to do it, kind of thing. And we knew that, and we recognized it, but we were having a tough time fixing it. And I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's because they were long-term employees. Recruiting is hard. It takes time. It takes effort. We liked them as people. I don't know. I mean, maybe all of those things. And I was really surprised at how EOS naturally flushed out the majority of those low performers. And I think it was just instilling the values, accountability. People are uncomfortable with that if they're not accountable. And most of those low performers left on their own, and we were able to kind of reevaluate the positions for the organization, and we've been able to hire a lot of young talent, which is awesome, and they're helping us move forward. And I think, EOS is really a recruitment and a retention tool as well. When you have process and you have goals defined, and when you reward high performers, you keep good employees. When there's no process or lack of process, people, the good employees, they'll either struggle or they'll leave. So that was a big one.
Perfect.
As well.
When you were saying that, actually before we get you off the hot seat, did you say that some of the low performers left on their own?
Yeah.
And do you think that EOS, and it's not really EOS, it's some of the tools, why did they leave on their own? Why did they, after 10 years, would certain people pick up at that point?
I think it was the accountability. I think holding people accountable for getting their own rocks done was a big thing, whether it was a rock or their metric. And there's only so long you can make excuses for things not getting done or blame other people for it. And I think it's uncomfortable for people that aren't accountable. I myself, so quick story, sorry.
Please.
So I want to say it was 6 to 8 months into when we started doing EOS, I started trying to do my departmental EOS. So my department is I'm going to use the term, Lou, it's central services, right? So it's finance, HR, IT. So that's departments of one, we're small. And I tell you, they were the most painful L10s ever. And I couldn't ever really figure out why. And what I got out of it was there were people who weren't comfortable answering to why they hadn't gotten anywhere with their rocks, or everything was kind of, things were excuses or things of that nature. And at the end of the day, right now, 2 of the 3 people aren't at the company anymore.
Yep.
And they left on their own. So just an example of kind of how that
Perfect.
worked itself out. So.
And Tom, you had a similar experience, didn't you?
Yeah, so in our very first meeting, we go off-site, we're working with Outpace. In our very first meeting, we brought our production manager to our leadership team. And we sat there, and I said right from the beginning, I said, guys, we're going to get transparent here. We're going to say what we mean, and you're going to hear me say some stuff that you might not have expected me to say before, but I'm just going to lay it all on the table. After that first 8-hour session, we laid out our leadership team, who was going to sit in what seat. And that very first day, our production manager, he looked at that and he said, guys, I do not want to be on this team anymore. Right in that very first meeting, day 1, and we're like, thank you. And since then, we found a new seat for him. He's doing much better, but we've filled someone else into that production manager role who's doing exceptionally well.
Oh, good.
People respect the hell out of the new production manager. He holds people accountable, and we're shipping much better, much more consistently. So day one.
Love it. Love it. I'll grab that from you. And so just to baseline everybody on kind of the concepts we're talking about, we're using terms like rocks and L10s and what these things are. So we basically, when EOS is going to start to work in an organization, the place that we start with is what we call the accountability chart. We're going to go build out the org chart for the leadership team. Seems like a simple exercise, right? Seems like it just needs 10 minutes. Everybody already knows it. We just got to formalize it and write it down. How long did it take for each of us, right? Like, it takes hours. It's like, at one church, it took us 10 hours, to give you a sense, to get the leadership team of the accountability chart set. Okay.
And these are existing companies that thought they already had a leadership team.
Yes, that's very true.
Idea of what the organizational structure was.
That's exactly right. So we basically go in, when we get that accountability chart, what we basically want to say is really kind of two things where we're trying to get to. The first one is, each manager of people, they have to do this thing. It's an EOS thing. We call it LMA for Leadership Management Accountability. And it basically works like this. Any people problems, it's on you. People are not trained, it's on you. People don't like it here, it's on you. If you're a manager, your job is to basically put the very best set of people that you have working for you. And until you get to have the very best team, one that you love, you're not there yet. You got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. Got to keep at it. So we say, okay. So when we define each job, each manager got to do LMA. So we're not going to talk about 20,000 different people things that you got to go manage and resource and hire and no, that's one thing. LMA, one bullet. So you got 4 bullets left in every seat. You can talk about what the rest of that job is. And the real kind of rule of thumb here is, what is that person supposed to do in a sentence? So if we take production, what are they supposed to do? Well, they got to basically resource people and manage the schedule and do shipping, and they got to basically make sure that the right materials are. It's like, okay, they got a lot of work to do. But at the end of the day, that job is to basically get the stuff, produce the stuff, and ship the stuff on time and on budget. All right? That's that person's role. All this whole kind of like making it complicated, we're going to kind of wipe that out. At the end of the day, your job is to basically ship everything on time, on budget. Do we have it? And at first, when you take a look at those leaders, they're like, whoa, it is not that simple. Until they get past that initial scare, and then they're like, yeah, my job is to get the stuff out on time and on budget. And we can do that for sales. Sales, what do you got to do? Oh, we got to propose stuff, we got to make pitch decks, we got to do this. At the end of the day, sales, I would expect you to get me revenue and new logos. That's what I want. And we keep it real simple like that. Because here's the reality to it. If we do not have clarity for what we expect of our direct reports, they definitely don't have it. So this is what we got to do, and this is why it takes hours, because it's like the production guy might say, hey, listen, I don't have shipping. That can't be part of my thing. It's like, oh, that's a good point. Where's shipping to? Nowhere. Somebody's got to be in charge of it. And that's when we start to go pull that stuff apart and start to figure out who's got what and really lock that stuff down. Once we have that accountability chart built, just even at the leadership team level, then we're going to basically introduce 2 more tools. One is called rocks. You heard people talking about that. Rocks are goals. They're 90-day goals. And the second one is scorecards or metrics or measurables. We expect that every person, if we're clear that this is what we want you to do, then we should be able to say, here's the metrics that we're going to measure that success on, and here's the goals I expect you to get done in the next 90 days. And ideally, you're not telling them, they're telling you what those things are. Once you have that, then we have the L10 meeting, and every week we check in on it. Hey, how are we doing on our scorecard? How are we doing on our goals? And to Kristen's point, what happens is, for the people that don't have the confidence, they don't have the desire, they don't have the natural accountability, they're like, whoa, like, and that meeting is just kind of like, hey, listen, I'm not trying to crack the whip on you. I'm here to help you. This is your area. What do you need? You have the entire leadership team here to help you. How do we help you get there? And for some people, they're like, this is awesome. I've wanted the freedom to be able to kind of start to drive this. For other people, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want this type of responsibility. And that's okay. You just can't be a leadership team member in the scaling business because we need someone to own this stuff. So those are the 4 tools that we typically start with, and they tend to have immediate impact. I feel like the other questions I've got here, I'll throw it out there, just we'll see where it goes. What's been the most meaningful tool? Like you could say I've queued it up, right, for accountability chart and scorecards and rocks, but like we haven't talked at all about vision type stuff. What has been them? Is that where you're gonna go?
I wasn't gonna go to that. To me, the L10 is the most meaningful tool.
Is it? Here,
Yeah.
explain.
So the L10 is the meeting, and again, I talked about before how we just had these meetings that were so ineffective before, and just the structure that it sets, and how accomplished I feel we are at the end of most of the meetings, it's a great tool, and so to me that's one of the most effective. But I like structure. So.
And Bob, you were saying the same thing?
I'd say the same thing, the LTEL meetings, but our quarterlies, we're in the movies, we haven't really graduated yet, so we meet with Rick on a quarterly basis. The facilitating and the open dialogue we have in those meetings to help us develop those quarterly rocks certainly have been beneficial. I mean, we've worked very well as a team, we put the L10s, and some are better than others on the L10 side, but developing that long-term vision on those in the quarterly meetings, I think, had a lot to do with it as well. And again, getting to the L10, no one wants to go to a meeting Monday at 9:30 and didn't achieve their rocks, right? I mean, that's really what this whole system's about. Accountability, not letting down your teammates, reaching for that same goal, and ultimately achieving it together.
Excellent.
I always like to compare what it was like before. So what were my meetings like before they were L10? It was, we knew what we were there to talk about, and maybe we would discuss whatever it was, and I'd have an expectation that someone was going to do one thing. Maybe another person in the meeting thought that person was going to do something else, and then that person thought something entirely different altogether. We come back next week, and maybe that thing was done, or maybe it wasn't done, and then we talk about why it wasn't done or what the excuse was, and then we wait another week. And meanwhile, people are kind of rolling their eyes. Maybe someone's in the meeting that doesn't belong there. We've all seen it, right? That all went away as soon as we started doing L10s. People knew exactly why they were in the meeting. We knew what was supposed to be done. We're all on the same page. It's up on the big screen because we're using a software that comes with all this stuff. And everyone's very clear what exactly is due next week, and everyone in the room knows it. When we come back that next week, it's either done or the spotlight is on that person, and no one wants that spotlight, right?
Yeah, that's just it. And as we get more mature with starting to use these tools, there is a concept that's pretty key, which is we don't want whoever the boss is, wherever we are in the organization, we don't want the boss dictating, saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. We want each of the different direct reports to say, here's where I think we need to take. I'll take that one, I'll take this thing, I'll take this. Because as soon as they start to say, I'll take, rather than you're assigned, that sense of ownership becomes a deeper thing. Their commitment's higher, their accountability's higher. So it's just kind of a small piece to it. So we talked a little bit about values. We talked a little bit about how that affects the place. For some people, values are kind of, wouldn't it be nice if we all got along and we put the values out there? But like at the end of the day, we got a business to run. And if I've got people that basically are jerks, but they're getting the job done, I'll take that trade. And EOS takes a pretty hard position. We're saying that's a bad trade. We got to get the production, but we need to find production from people that are consistent with the values. What's been your experience with values and things?
I think this is actually my favorite part, because before all this, I knew that culture was important, and I tried to launch core values into our organization, but I didn't know how to use them as tools. I didn't know, like how do you do it? You give everybody some swag. You have a pizza party, and when everyone does good, right? Like how do you build this big happy environment, right? There's tools that come with EOS. One of them being the people analyzer. So you evaluate your hires and all the people that are in your organization. You hire, fire, and reward to your core values, and you grade people on a system using this tool. And whether they get it, want it, or have the capacity to do it. So you'll hear those things a lot. So we're actually using our core values as tools, and we're grading our people on it. And the effect of that has been tremendous. We're hiring much better people, and it stands out when someone's not, exhibiting a core value. We can call them out on it, and they know that they're not doing it either. So We haven't fired anybody yet because they haven't been exhibiting core values, but it's much clearer now, and yeah, it's been very effective.
We actually worked on our people analyzer today.
All right.
That's very good. And it's kind of cool, like the discussions that it brings up. And I think, I actually just thought of this now, but we've hired new people. And it's a good way, I think, to recognize relatively early on if there's an issue or somebody isn't to the level we would like them to be in the core values. 1 month, 2 months into them being here versus they're here for 4 years and are like in the same position we were prior to EOS. So again, the tool is really useful. And the core values, I'm a numbers person, right? So the core value thing and thought vision, that's all, to me in the beginning, it's fluffy. But I don't see it that way anymore. I see how it's affected our employees, how people want to be there, they want to work together. We give quarterly rewards to our employees at the quarterly plant meetings based on, we ask employees to put an example of somebody who exhibited one of the core values and what they did, and then we give a reward to one of the people who was selected and one of the people who put in and nominated that person. So
Cool.
That's one of the things we do, but Jill's our core values person. She could speak to more of that, but I'm a believer now.
Excellent.
No, I chime in with those comments. We had a paradigm shift probably 8 years ago with our company, way before EOS, completely changing the culture of the organization to the better, but we're still running astray. And to Tom's point, we believe in core values. They were more fluff than anything else. After that first meeting, coming up with core values, the hire to fire, I already talked about, some of the selections we made, right people in the wrong seats or wrong people in the wrong seats. We've done, I don't even want to use cheesy, but we have done this way, like the hooded sweatshirts with all the core values. Our break room, the list of our core values, because the communication of people getting it done every day don't necessarily understand really what we do inside. And that's not, that's something we really have to work with as part of the EOS system and part of the L10s and shared values, but the core values and everything we do, and we have 4 of them, we live and die by. And it's, I like Kristen, really never paid, I don't want to say didn't pay the due respect, but it wasn't a driving force in me running the business. Now, it's a major factor of everything that we do, and will continue to be so.
Excellent. We'll grab that for you. Thank you. Yeah, the core values thing, there's a couple of things that will start to happen, and this is something that I would really impress on everybody here, whether you use EOS or not. When we talk about core values, we're not talking ethics, to be clear. We're talking about character traits. And I'll use an example, we use this a lot. Let's say there's a Marine Corps drill instructor that's been doing it for like last 25 years, and they're ready to retire out of the Marine Corps. They're young enough, they want to go get a job in the commercial sector, and they're out looking. And that Marine Corps instructor for the last so many years has been getting up at 5 in the morning, charging, barking at people, telling them they're not doing good enough, move faster, rah, like all the time. Well, when that person comes into the commercial sector, where's a good place that would be a good match for somebody who's wired like that? And maybe working at Red Bull or Nike would be a good place where somebody who's just amped up naturally would find a good outlet. Maybe, and I'm generalizing here, if there's any drill instructors, I don't mean to be characterizing you poorly, but maybe for somebody wired like that, the Boston Museum of Fine Arts or the local library may not be the right fit. Somebody's coming in like, oh, get moving, we gotta get people through here, get out of here, get. Like, that's not gonna work. It doesn't make the person a bad person, it's just they're wired differently. So when we talk about core values and we find people that represent those core values in our organization, you get some really important things that happen. One of those things is you can delegate, whereas before you couldn't. If you had somebody you didn't trust their judgment, they don't represent the values of the organization, the way they kind of look at the world, the things that they prioritize are just not the way that this company looks at things, your ability to be like, okay, use your judgment to figure out this answer, it does not exist. So it really limits your ability to delegate. In addition, When you do start to bring in people that do represent those values, you have a really big benefit. Not only do you trust them faster, but their ability to basically get ramped up and take on a lot more areas of responsibility moves up a lot faster. Just because I trust them, the way they're looking at it is exactly right. We're getting simpatico really, really quickly. And so values do pay. And I will say in my tech days, I was all performance-based. I did not emphasize this as much. As a coach for the last 3 years, it's become so clear. You can tell the companies right away that take their values seriously and the ones that don't. And I'll tell you, the number one measure of that is when you come into meetings, they're like, we have such a big problem with attrition right now. When I hear that, my number one kind of place to investigate is going to be, how are your values? Are your people bought in to who this business is? Do they feel at home here, or do they feel like this place is just like a job? So with that, one of the things that we'll do early on too is we'll identify what your 10-year vision is. 10-year target is what we call it. Now it's just a sentence. We want it to be a big, hairy, audacious goal. We want it to be real. And then once we have that, once we say we know what we want to be, then we can roll it back and say, okay, if we're going to be here in 10 years, what are we going to be in 3 years? 10 years out, we can wait 9 years before we basically have accountability. That's not going to work, right? So 10 years out, we now roll down, okay, 3 years, where do we need to be? We got to be here. Then after we create that 3-year picture, we then say, okay, so if we're going to be there in 3 years, where do we have to be in a year? And then we basically put together a plan for what the 1-year plan is going to be. This is an annual plan. It's nice and short. And then once we have the 1 year, we say, okay, if we get on the 1 year, that's going to drive us to 3 year, which drives us to the 10-year, we're good. We just got to get there by the end of the year. And that's when we roll back into what the quarterly goals are. That's what we're calling the rocks. What are the quarterly goals that will drive us to the 1 year, to the 3 year, to the 10-year? Open question to you guys. Your 10-year target, when you first created it, what do you think? Did it feel like it was too aspirational? Do you feel like it was very doable? Your 10-3 1 year, was it like piece of cake? Was it hard?
I think it's supposed to be the goal. When you say, oh my God, we're going to do that, is that possible? Do I want to commit to that?
Tell everybody.
If we fail, like what's going to happen? I think you're supposed to feel like that, and we definitely did. And we still do, I guess, but so you track her down from your 10 year to your 3 and then your 1. And we're 3 months into when we started our 1 year goal, and we've already hit a portion of it in 2.5 months. And I didn't expect that. I thought 1 year, oh, this is ambitious, and we've already hit part of that goal, and we're on track to hit the rest of it. And I'm like, this is going to be easy. It's been 2 months, and we have 10 more to go. So I've noticed.
So you're saying you set it too low?
I've heard other people speak to that same sort of power. And actually today I was on a call with other manufacturers from around the country, and one of them happened to use EOS, and he said, I started it 8 years ago. I said, oh, that's interesting. So how's your 10-year goal going? He goes, oh, we crushed it. One of it was to plant a tree for every product we sold or something like that. We're doing around 7 or 6 continents right now.
Wow, that's cool.
And our EBITDA is just through the roof and whatever. Yeah. So
Any feelings on the 10 to 3? Anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every time we redefine our 3-year goal, we're already like closer to what the prior 3-year goal was, right? Like, and I'm like, but when you do it, you're like, I don't know about that, right?
Yeah,
And we're sometimes a little bit conservative, I think, just in general. But every time we redefine it, we're like really close at that point in time. So then, the 10-year doesn't seem so crazy.
Daunting, yeah.
Conservative coming from the CFO, but we'll leave that alone. Yeah, well, I mean, we should, I don't want to jinx it, we should hit our 3-year goal first year in. So, and another, we've been downwind, frankly, our business has been very strong for commercial construction and everything. But another thing about EOS, it gets you in position to perhaps prepare for those times that aren't really as good as they're supposed to be. It's going to be a little tougher for us. We're going to have to work harder this year. So some of our rocks right now are already formulating to kind of protect that 3-year, the work we've done to get to that 3-year area, and also to, most importantly, reach that 10-year goal. So it is the good and the bad. You know, if you play defense with it as well, but obviously more offensive, but in certain times you got to play some defense as well.
Perfect. Yeah, so one of the things what Kristen's talking about when we recreate the 3-year, the first time that we do this, it's usually like the second or third meeting that we have, and we're setting we've already got the 10-year, we're now like, okay, what should the 3-year picture be? And when we first start doing it, a lot of times the company doesn't have confidence, some confidence, just not a tremendous amount of confidence, that all the things are going to come together to be able to get to where that 3-year picture is, to get to the 10-year picture. So one of the things that we do, this drove me crazy, but I totally appreciate why we do it, is every year when we get to the kind of annual plan, we will then rebuild the 3-year picture. And it's a funny reaction, because everybody's always like, whoa, 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 we're killing it on the 3-year picture. What do you mean we're going to rewrite it? Like, that's not fair. So we do keep a copy of it. We don't throw it away, because I was the same way. I wanted to, like, we did this. I didn't want to have to rebuild it. But the thing that's cool from an outsider perspective is when you come to these companies and you start to work with the different accounts, the ambition of the company after the third meeting versus after the first year is completely different. When they're looking at the 3-year before, they're like, we should go for here. The first annual, they're like, oh, no, we should aim for here now. 3 years out, we should aim for here. And by the second annual, like, we got to be aiming there. First, you're like, come on, you can do it, you can do it. Then it's like, all right, take it easy, take it easy. So there's a little bit of a swing, but that's what we mean by rebuilding the 3-year. All right. A couple open-ended questions, and then I'd love it if people have questions. We'll throw these out to the panel. Who should and who shouldn't use EOS? They didn't, yeah, sorry. There you go. You take it, Tom.
No, I think it's funny because we started using it and people on our leadership team sort of incorporated it into their personal lives.
No, that happens, yeah.
You know, giving themselves personal rocks outside of the business. I just thought that was funny. But I don't know, I think you need some level of organizational complexity to have EOS. And I'm not going to guess at the number of people here or there, what's the max or what's the min, but I think even if you have 5 people that you want to get aligned, that's what you could start with that and go from there. And if you have a complex organization, I think it'd be effective after that.
Any thoughts? If you don't, it's okay.
No, I'm.
I got a follow-up question otherwise.
I mean, I think having a leadership team that, for the most part, already shares the same values is important. Not that that can't be changed through EOS, but I think we were lucky that we started out with a management team that we all really did share a lot of the same core values. It just wasn't really defined. So when you have that and everybody's on board, I think that it just makes an easier transition. So I didn't necessarily answer the question.
You do. You're saying that makes sense.
Not really. I mean, it's.
All right. Hold that microphone. I got another question. I'll throw it back to you guys. What's been the most challenging part of EOS? Has there been anything that we've talked about tool-wise that you're looking at and saying, I wasn't sure about that one, and it was really tough?
I got a lot of those.
You got a lot of those? All right, easy here.
I've been here the longest. Other than you. I won't take them all. There was challenges along the way. One of our biggest challenges, and you could vouch for this, is having way too many racks. I was the worst offender of that. I think for a year straight, Rick was like, you can't have 8. You can't have 8. And I was like, I need 8. I need all of it. They all need to get done. He's like, you can't have 8. I'm like, no, I can't. And then it's fine, take it off, but I'm still doing it. So then those turned into another challenge, which was ninja rocks. That's what we've coined. So they're not like technically written out as rocks, but they're like things that we were kind of throwing in there and saying, well, we have to do this, or how about this project? So I think that only changes with time. Now I have like 2.
Yeah, exactly.
With it. I think it's just getting used to like really figuring out what the rocks are versus just something you have to get done. And the ninja rocks, you call your team out on it. I mean, we call each other out all the time on stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, because they really just get in the way of focusing on what you've already defined as the most important things to get done.
Yeah, Bob, what do you think was the most challenging?
I would agree with Kristen. I mean, I think our initial meeting, first of all, was difficult when you have hard issues. I think you kicked off the meeting by saying so. Identifying strengths and weaknesses of your leadership team, talking openly. I mean, these are coworkers, these are good friends, and obviously they're part of your leadership team trying to take the company in the right direction. So that was a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable. Brett did an excellent job of kind of facilitating that and facilitating open communication. But to Kristen's point, we all tried to find out more than we could chew. I think my first time I had 7 rocks. Our executive VP had 8, VP of marketing had 6, and Kristen had 7. And we did a damn good job getting it done, but probably not as effectively as we can by narrowing them. Last time, I believe, when we were in New Haven 3 weeks ago when we had our last quarterly meeting, your suggestion was to cut them all back. And, you know, there's not that they don't need to be done, it's just priority. What's more important, what takes precedence now, and that's a good thing, as I said earlier, about 13 weeks. It's not a lot of time. Achieve that goal, or rock, and move on to the next.
All right, perfect. So we got one last question. And, oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead, you dive in, yeah.
I need to say it.
Yeah, go.
As a family business, I think one of the challenging things is, you know, EOS forces you to become a business, and you're making business decisions. And in a family business, or even in a small business, you become close with everyone you work with. And sometimes emotion gets in the way, and you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. EOS kind of makes it more about the business, but in a really good way. I think it helps people become the best versions of themselves. And I said this on our podcast, and I meant it, but I think EOS truly gives everybody the opportunity to become the best leader that they can possibly be, because it gives them all the tools. And an observation that I thought of when you were talking, it also gives everybody the same lingo to go off of. So we're all talking about rocks and
L10s.
L10s and all this stuff. You're speaking the same language with everybody, and they all know what you mean. So, you know, the aligning effect of it is really great too. Sorry, I had to say that.
I love that you said that. All right, that's perfect. All right, so we'll kind of wrap up with this question, then we'll take questions. But at the end of the day, if we basically if this thing's working right, we're getting everybody aligned in the business. We're increasing our communication. We're getting friction out of it. And this is where, before, I'm going to use a hand gesture here. Before, if we have people, we may be growing, but our people are bouncing into each other. Afterwards, once we get EOS in place and we get everybody aligned, and we basically have people not bouncing into each other, then all of a sudden that same amount of energy allows for faster growth, because we don't have the resistance slowing us down. So to me, that's the true test. And so for each of the folks here, here's my question. I think I know the answers, but I'm not positive I know the answers. I hope I know the answers. Are you having, this year, do you think it'll be one of your best years? Now, I know it's a 100-year-old business and a 100-year-old business. We'll say in the last 20 years, I don't want to take like 1910 was a good year. But in the last 20 years or 25 years, are you having like your best year or close to it? Anybody?
From a sales perspective, we're going to be last year in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, good.
So we're 1 month ahead of our where we were last year at the end of the year. So that's good. And from a people perspective, I think we're much stronger than we have ever been. We have more people working for us right now than we ever have been. We're still not at our pre-COVID level, but I think we're going to blow through that next year.
Excellent.
100%.
Best year?
So I'm going to go to the financial side of this.
I know, I was worried about the computer.
So we've had 7 quarters of record profit. And I truly think that EOS gave us the structure to accomplish the goals that we needed to make the tough decisions that we needed to make to get there. Prior to that, we had several years of significant losses. And so I don't think we would have been as successful these past 2 years if we didn't have this tool in place. I honestly feel that. So
Appreciate that.
yeah, it's amazing. And if you asked me 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. So
Love it.
Um,
Yeah, Bob.
that's all I got.
Yeah.
People, 100%. I mean, our company is so much better internally with our people via core values, but 2021 was the best year, top and bottom line we ever had as an organization, and 2022 shattered. Now the hard work comes in to kind of maintain that, sustain that with some of the changes in the environment and obviously in the commercial construction arena, but we're in the best position to recover and be ahead of the curve versus kind of reacting as we had in the past. So 100%, it's been fantastic for us.
Perfect. When you guys hold on to the mic, I think they've heard me speak a lot. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I'd be curious to learn about, you make mention of the meetings that occur. And what are the elements of L10 that made a difference in those meetings? And second question is, what is as a coach, what's the added value that a coach brings to an organization if they were to embark on any of this?
I'd love to have you guys answer those if you don't mind.
I'll do the L10. I talk too much in meetings. So the L10 is always, it's structured, it's timed. You know, you have obviously seats, design seats, visionary, the integrator, and then the rest of the team, obviously. The integrator does all the heavy lifting. They mark the clock, they keep things on pace. You have set things to talk about. There's no wasted time. It's an hour and a half of your week, which is probably equivalent to 8 hours to get more production done. If I understood your question correctly, the value of the implementer, the same way. I mean, we've been in business together a long time. We get a lot done together, but you need someone to say, hey, enough. We're moving on. Keep this on point. Getting things done based on everything. I mean, I don't want to speak for Rick, but Rick knows our 10-year plan. He knows that what rocks and what we need to do to get to that and execute it, and maybe not go astray in some of the communication that we have. It keeps them on point. And you know, we have yet to graduate. I don't know if I want to graduate. It just keeps us going and keeps us moving more succinctly.
Yeah. Tom?
If that makes any sense.
You want to go?
I mean, I think it's really just again, the structure of the meetings, but it's dropping things down to identify, discuss, and solve. I was questioning myself there for a minute.
Yeah, you got it right.
And instead of just somebody droning on and on about it, you have a list of things you want to talk about, you prioritize those, you get to what you get to, and it's just the structure of the meeting, the agenda, there's no question about it. So you can get off track, but if you have the people in the meeting saying, no, let's drop that down, you know, then things just get done and discussions get
Definitely.
done and resolved. So, and Rick is awesome.
Hope everybody heard that part. Those did. No.
Well, there's one more thing. There's always things that we struggle with, even in the L10s, right? So like the too many rocks or the ninja rocks, and we can't figure, or we have an issue IDSing, identifying, discussing, and solving. So those are things we take to Rick, and we're like, listen, we've done 12 meetings over the past quarter. We can't figure this out. What are we doing wrong? How do we fix it?
That's a very good example. We struggle with the integration of L10s amongst our team and how best to have meetings so they're beneficial. And we actually tabled one. We IDS'd, made it an issue, and then our L10 of how do we best answer that. We'll get with Rick next time we have our quarterly. And one of the first things we did, we figured if we do it with Rick, it'll take 15 minutes. If we try to do it, it's going to take 4 hours. So just,
Appreciate that.
My meetings before L10 were, mostly my idea, right? Like, okay, we need a meeting for this, so we'd go in there and I would create the agenda and I'd pass out the information and everything, and I'd go down everything and I'd call on people and I would try to hold people accountable. But it was all what I was thinking. It was like what I was trying to do to my organization to get everything going. Whereas this is, it's a system. I'm simply running through the meeting. The agenda is crystal clear. What we're going to talk about is crystal clear. I'm facilitating the conversation. Everyone's dialed in, and we're doing it the right way. It's not Tom's meeting, it's the L10 meeting. And I think that's the big reason for having an implementer too. It's not Tom's telling us to do EOS, it's Tom sitting on the side of the table as us, and he's just as accountable as everybody else. And Kat's holding me accountable, and I have to do my stuff too. And it's not me telling everybody to do stuff.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. It's well said. The specific L10 meeting agenda, we have identified what the critical numbers are for the business. We look at that. We understand what the critical goals are that we got to get done this quarter. We look at that. If anything on those two lists, scorecard rocks, are off track, we drop it down and we figure out how to get it back on track immediately. We want to kill the monster when it's small, not when it's eating Tokyo. So that's the spirit to that. Yeah.
So what would you say the biggest difference between the rocks, which you guys talk about, and a traditional quarterly goal? Because it sounds like the rocks are those quarterly goals, but you're being much more effective at executing them.
Anybody? I can talk all day. You guys know this, yeah.
I could too. I didn't tell her in the face. A good example. So we know where we want to go in a year, right? So we look at our yearly plan and say, okay, where do we need to be in the first quarter? So as a team, we talk about our quarterly objectives, but we update each other on our quarterly objectives and how we're progressing every single week. If it's off track, we say it's off track, and if someone needs help, we all help each other. But the funny thing is, you kind of start doing crazy stuff to make sure you get it done, because you're like, the quarter's coming, there's a month left, I'm off track, I need a little bit of help. You're like, all right, let's make an order that you need to write a work instruction. We don't have an order for it, but I'm gonna make it, we're gonna go into production, we're gonna make this thing just so that you can finish your rock. It's crazy, right? But by the end of this quarter, that thing is gonna be done, we're gonna have a work instruction for it, end story. And the next time when we get an actual order, we'll have the work instruction for it. We never would have done that before.
I'll make my heart sing here. This is great. Way to go, Kat.
I don't know, maybe specific.
No, one more. Time for one more.
Rocks are quarterly goals, to be clear. The only thing that might adjust is we're really focused on calibrating those to the 1 year, the 3 year, and the 10 year. So that calibration is key. And then we're relentless at every week. We're checking on those things, and if that thing's off, we're on it. Yeah?
How scalable is EOS? It sounds like it's been really successful for small and mid-sized businesses, revenue, growth, profitability, and employees. And you will, I guess, revisit the plan, the annual plan for your goals. Like, how often do you have to revisit the actual structure, what you've implemented, and can you outgrow it to where you need like decentralized command or like smaller EOS is created?
It's a great question. So a couple of different answers. One is the pure EOS target market, so I'll start with that. And then I'm going to talk about kind of the outpaced point of view on this, which is a little bit different. So from an EOS perspective, EOS looks at it, the target market are companies that are between 10 and 250 employees. That is a sweet spot for EOS, scales really easily, natural place where it's really going to excel. That said, EOS was designed to be the simplest tool set. They worked super hard to find really simple tools to base things that people have heard of. People have heard of org charts. We call it accountability chart. Okay, I get it, yeah. We've heard of goals, we've heard of KPIs, we've heard of these things. So we tried to find the simplest system that can exist. And I do think EOS is really successful at creating the simplest system. The reason why I emphasize this is because for bigger organizations, in order to scale, you need simplicity. Complexity crushes you when you're trying to scale across a bigger business. So for Outpace, we're particularly good at the larger businesses. I think our largest client right now is got 1,100 employees. It's a manufacturer here in Connecticut. From my standpoint, it should work for every size company, but EOS is specifically designed for that 10 to 250. It's a great question. We're out, right? It's the pizza smell. I can smell it over here. Thank you.
Round of applause to our Rick. Thank you very, very much. much for your insight and your time. I know Rick does have some implementers here, so if you have any questions, if you gotta just raise your hands, the implementers, the Outpace team folks. So if there's any questions, they're here to answer the questions. We've got about 25 minutes or so. So if your drink tickets, the bar's open, there's lots of pizza over there. Please help yourself. And thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you on December 7th at our next event.